Hey guys, gonna talk about CMMD. Weaker cycle stuff continues, which is really nice to see. We're seeing more long trappy price action work in the pre-market, and a lot of heaviness at market open. So it's really nice. It's good to see that. We saw that starting the end of last week, and it is continuing into this week. So really, it's a really great time when the market turns from really strong to weak. That's really when you get the biggest gappers, and you get biggest gappers with morning fades, which is really nice. So we'll talk about CMNB. Um, I just missed most trades yesterday. I didn't. I made a few small trades. I had a green day yesterday, but I didn't nail any big ones. I didn't really make any videos yesterday. But let's see if I get the brush. But yeah, two shorts. This is a fake 5 minute flag short. We'll go over the book. Book is really interesting. On this play, it was incredibly strong in the pre-market. There was actually a great long um, right on the book in the pre-market. And if you had the book, you actually would have known that on this entire push, you really did not want to short any of this because there were bidders, 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 bidders. There's like 5, 6 layers of bidders supporting the stock on this push. It wasn't just one guy, and there's really no secret why it went up only. Honestly, it was a great long. Um, by the time I got on, it was already here, and I was like, oh, this is just like here's a high day clear out, and then an instant dump, and then a walk down, right? A controlled walk down. So we learned in low floats that a lot of times these quick, just like over here, a lot of times these quick dumps can be really strong, right? They're really strong because the order book tends to be very thin. It creates a lot of empty space here. Order book tends to be thin. They just throw up some bids. In this case, it was really interesting. They had an 80,000 share ask pushing this down. There's 80,000 shares, and it got all the way to 2.79, which is here, and then they pulled it. And the moment they pulled it, they initiated it straight up and threw like 6 layers of bids to support the stock. And I talked about that in previous videos of how market makers will use these extremely huge bids and asks. I'm not just talking about like 10, 20K. I'm talking like in this case 80K. Sometimes it's 100K. Sometimes it's like 60 or 70, but it's usually above 50, 50K, all the way up to like 150K. And and a lot of times in low floats, when you see that, you have to understand in the pre-market, an order book usually only has like couple thousand shares here, 5,000 shares there, 7,000, 8,000. It's like it's kind of everything's under like 10K. It's like 10K or lower, right? It's not normal to have an 80,000 share ask just appear literally out of nowhere, right? In a low float land, these algos will use that. These riggers moving the stock will use that to move a stock how they want, um, and then sometimes they get rid of it. Sometimes it stays there. Sometimes they let it get taken out. There's kind of a lot of different variations of things that can happen. But in the context of this chart, um, when you get a massive dump from high day, which we've seen be strong, and then a controlled walk down where it's just lower highs and lower lows, um, it could be strong, right? It could be strong. It's a bullish factor, right? So um, just I used a book to completely avoid the short on this, and then it did a couple inches. So this was your 5 into 9, 1 minute 50 EMA. It was like this. Bounced right off of it, big push. And they pulled all the bids. It was really interesting. They had a bunch of bids here. There's a bunch of bids here, and then on this rotation towards highs, they pulled. There's zero bids on. We'll go over it on the book. And then I actually made a pretty rare market open long. I usually don't like shorting 930, but I was very bearish these rotations. A lot of times in weak markets, you'll get what looks like a strong move at 927, 928, 929. They'll make some type of like bullish looking move, and then market open comes in, they dump, right? Um, so we'll go over the book. And then we're finally getting clean backside plays. Here's a 3.7 clear out, cleared out 3.7. You could see the higher lows. This was a single order, higher lows. Right, higher lows. It cleared out 3.07. It instantly rejected it and then faded um, down towards the 5-minute 200. But then the volume got really, 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 really thin. So I just decided to get all out into 2.7. So I was like, you know what? Sometimes when volume goes to zero, you just don't get continuation anymore. And that's about that. So we'll go over to, uh, yep, so here's the chart. You can see the controlled walk down. Here's the initiation. And then you can see this is the 5-minute 9, big push, second push, right? I definitely wanted it above 3.5. So I shorted this candle. So we'll go over the book, see what the book looks like. Um, we'll go to that. So my book map is actually not going to show this 80,000 share ask. It was right here at 2.79. It was right here. Right where this rotation is where they pulled the ask. And the reason it's not on my book map is because it was on Arca. Arca does not show on DXF feed. And so you're not going to see it that there was 80,000 shares on the ask. It got pulled. You could see the bid support. And not only did it have bid support at the bottom, but a big factor for continuation for example, a high day squeeze in this case is follow-up bid support, and there's just tons. I was telling my Discord, um, information down below about my Discord, by the way, but I was telling my Discord, I was like, this has constant bid follow-up, and I was very tempted to short the high day clear out because that pattern has been working. Um, but I passed on it and I saw how many bids they were throwing at the bottom here, and I was like, you know what, let me be. I'm not going to long because the market's getting weaker, so I was trying to avoid. As the market conditions get like this, I try to avoid going long more and more. I saw them throw up a bunch of bids near 3. I didn't take this bounce just because I thought, well, the bids are there. Maybe they're just going to, squeeze high day, and they did. They just squeezed high day. I was just thrown off by the bidders in the empty book. It was a little scary, and I didn't want to take this. Um, and then, yeah, I ended up avoiding that trade. But here's where it got really interesting, right? So here's our big squeeze to 3.6s. And again, I'm seeing a million bids down here. So I'm like, well, I'll wait for the structure, right? I'll wait for the the lower highs or the higher lows or what have you, or the MAs to catch up, right? 1 minute 50, 5-minute 9 in this case. Like I'll just wait. This is nothing immediately clear to me in kind of this part where the short is. Now, here's the initiation off the 5-minute 9. And suddenly the book starts to get real thin. I'm like, wow. I shared this on my Discord. I'm like, they really pulled the bids on this. Like, there's like 6 layers of bids here. Now there's like nothing, right? You can see them beginning to pull it. And, I saw this first bounce. I'm like, okay, that's right at 3.5. It's high day's 3.69. Let me see another push. And when we got the second push, now I'm looking at all these asks stacked up here, right? We got 1 layer, 2 layer, we got 3 layers of ask. Really nice, lack of bid support. You got to keep in mind if we go back to Thinkorswim that this chart has already squeezed 1 time here, 2 times here. When the market gets weaker, you get less legs up. You can count how many pullbacks and how many high day squeezes there's been. And in a strong market, something might push 5-6 times, and in a weak market, you might only get 1 or 2 pushes. With those pushes primarily being in the pre-market because it's easier to push a stock in the pre-market, right? So, I'm already counted 2 big squeezes, right? And weaker marketing conditions, and now I'm getting a thinner order book, right? I'm getting a clear, little MA, classic 5-minute 9 rotation, and it was really the second push, this first push, but in the second push, I always love to see the mini pullback in the second push, because a lot of times the second push is when the pull happens, right? So I really like to make a read on um, how this, especially this was 3.55, how that 3.5 level is getting broken, what the asks are looking like. I like to see if any new bids showed up. Um, so I took that right away, and then I was like, I was, but at the same time, you want to have a bullish thesis. Well, it's like, well, the bullish thesis here is that there's kind of a lower high paint under high day. There's a lower high, there's lower high, and there's always a chance they walk it down in the open and then squeeze, right? It's common. You use the market open volume to squeeze high day. Very normal. Happen, especially in the strong market, was happening all the time. Just market open volume, high day squeeze. Market open volume, high day squeeze. Market open, market just like in the straw market, you know, market open volume can really initiate a stock. Um, but it's really these like we saw this with Acon too a couple days ago, and I missed this one. I was a little annoyed that you get these like 929, these initiations right before market open. Um, Even though this one wasn't nearly as strong in terms of volume, but it wasn't bad. Um, but I was saying to my, this goes like, there is lower high paint, but I'm going to watch what the book looks like at market open. And the number one thing I'm always looking at is how are if I'm short, I'm going to be looking at, well, where are the asks? Because, there's always going to be new asks and new bids coming in after market open, right? So market open happens, and I'm like, where are the asks? There's obviously one up here near high day, but is there anything below high day? Because I'm afraid of these lower highs getting squeezed. So I see 360 right away, and I see a dump right away. I'm like, okay, 360 guy. Like if it eats through this 360 guy, it's probably going to go high day. So I was like, okay, let me read what any rotation looks like. I saw the bids. I'm like, okay, maybe it bounces off the bids and rotates back up. Just keeping an eye on that. But it's really this push. I saw it, hitting 350, and then it got above 350. So I was like, oh, I think this is, if this is going to push, there should be a lot of buying right here. We should see a push towards this 360 level. And, I just saw, after it broke 350, I saw how weak this was getting. And I'm like, oh man, like, usually I don't short 930. I like 931 perfectly fine, but I usually try to avoid 930. But I thought this was a decent signal on the book. I was like, if this goes back below 350, I'm just going to add the rest of my shares, and that's what I did. I added my shares on this breakdown, I think in the 340 somewhere, and rest is history, man. It's so surprising how weak things get. Like I saw, because it has big volume. So, in strong markets, you'll see, maybe a bounce at a 1 minute 200. I thought it might chop here for maybe, 20, 30 minutes and rotate. We saw a lot of these like pullback, 10, 10:30 rotate and pull, right? Pullback, 10 o'clock rotate, pull, right? Kind of like this. Um, and I'm like, oh, there's like VWAP resistance here. There's VWAP resistance here. I'm like, oh man, maybe they'll like do a mini VWAP squeeze, right? But at the same time, what is the book telling me? What's the book telling me about VWAP right here? Get back to market open. The book is really, and I pointed this out when CMMD broke $3 right here. I'm like, wow, look how thick the book is. I was telling my Discord, I'm like, there's like 4, 5, 6 layers of like 15, 20K ass just stacked. This is all below VWAP. Like, there's a bunch of orders, guys. I was like, there's a lot. Like, there's gonna be a lot of orders this has to move through, and at the same time, market open volume is getting real weak, getting really, real weak. So I'm like, man, like, and just like we saw with Acon and the play yesterday, I'm like, there's been no bounces in these things, dude. Just zero bounces. So I always have some type of backside thesis. I'm like, that's why I cover some on the 1 minute 200. Maybe it rotates back up to 3.25, 3.3. I get a nice short. It comes back down. But I really didn't get that. The only thing we got was this very clearly painted backside level, right? Right here, right? All these lower highs. Got this one, got this one. 307, 307, 305. This is 304s, 304. And I was like, okay, this is kind of, your painted backside level. Clear higher lows. You could see the higher lows building, right? And when we're in periods of, less liquidity, um, what you'll get is you'll get these. Look, this is from here to here. This is 3 hours. This is 3 hours of soak. So 3 hours of soak just to paint one level, and they only have enough liquidity to push it past that level before pulling it, right? So, um, and here the book here was even more obvious that that there's going to be very little continuation. So if we go here, this is that 307 push. There was somebody came in and put a 50,000 share ask at 313, and that doesn't even count, this guy, this guy, this guy. Like there's like many levels. Funny enough, right after they did this 307 clear out, they pulled the bids down here. It's not funny how that works. There's a very smart, astute guy in my room who pointed this out. I'm sorry, I'd have to go back and look up your name, but he pointed that out. I was like, oh, that's always good to see. It's always good to see um, bids get pulled lower after some type of liquidity move, right? This is a painted liquidity move, and it's good to see. And you can actually see a mini one get pulled here too, like. You know, this bid, this 10,000 share bid right here, was supporting the stock. Liquidity move happens, bidder gone, and then it pulls back, and then the deeper bidders go. Um, and yeah, I ended up covering. It's funny. You actually see that this 50,000 share guy chased all the way down, and I think he got filled in the low 270s. He put his order. Where was it? Like, no, it was here. This 50K guy came to 2.67, which is the bottom of this bounce, by the way, and got completely filled. So this 50K guy was like chasing lower and lower, and then finally got filled. But yeah, originally I was gonna wait for the 5-minute 200 on this, by the way, but the main problem was like when volume gets this low, right? Especially like this is the liquidity move, this is the dump. Like there's just no further selling, and the 5-minute 200 is only like maybe 10 cents lower, and I'm like, you know what? Um, it already took 3 hours for this higher low structure to break, and now we're at we're at the very bottom of the pump. Um, and volume is getting close to zero. Like sometimes I just take the profit when I can, honestly. And this is doing an interesting rotation. I wonder what this does in the end of the day. But yeah, I got out into 2.7s. It just got too dry. There were some bidders down here, and I was like, you know what, fine. And it ends up being good because apparently it's rotating. It's rotating up. So, but yeah, I guess big lessons. This controlled walk down with that 80,000 share ask, those extreme bids in ask. By the way, this was a really good long, by the way, over here. I'll show the book on that. That was actually a great long. I was not awake for this, but this is exactly what a really good pre-market long looks like. You get your initial pop, and we've seen this before. You get this deep instant pullback. You could see how empty the book is. Besides this one guy at 270, pretty much an empty book, and they just pull it into 4 or 5 layers of bids. Here's the ask getting taken out. Here's bid follow up, and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of bid follow up all the way up to high day. So really nice. And yeah, here's your controlled walk down. You could see the bids. You could see how empty the book is, and there's the bid follow up. Tons of bid follow up. Just tons and tons. This was actually a great long right here. Should have did a good long at the top right here. This was nice. But yeah, and then you can really see them pull the bids, and then big dump at market open. So, Anyways, CMMD, weak market stuff. Really nice to see. Alright, guys, have a good one.